I'm going to play for you a piece of the interview on the podcast of the author of the article, Party of One, Profiler Michael Savage by Mr. Sanneh, right now from the New Yorker on the Savage Nation. Fire
Michael
away.
Savage is one of the most popular conservative talk radio hosts in the country. His show, The Savage Nation, reaches more than 8 million listeners each week.
We so-called conservatives are actually the liberals of America. And the so-called liberals are the actual fascists of America.
Savage's disdain for the left is savage. One of his many books is called Liberalism is a Mental Disorder. But listeners to his show get a lot more than politics, as Kelefa Sanneh tells us in his profile this week. Welcome back, Kay.
Thanks.
So the election of Barack Obama has put conservatives back in the opposition, and that has re-energized talk radio. Is that what got you interested in doing this piece? And why did you pick Michael Savage of all the conservative talk show hosts?
That's part of what got me interested in doing this piece. I'd heard him over the years and found myself listening to him a bunch last year during the election. And he was interesting partly because he seemed to be so off-message.
Oh, I know what you're expecting, but you're not going to get it from me. You'll have to go to one of the other talk show hosts to get Obama's a Marxist and McCain is a war hero. If that's what you want from now until November, you're on the wrong dial position.
Savage, despite being identified as a conservative talk show host, didn't really seem to like McCain that much. Definitely hated Obama. Didn't really like Bush.
So he was reacting really differently than the other conservative hosts.
Well, most of the other conservative hosts, no matter what the problems they might have had with McCain, were they certainly supported him.
Right.
And Savage really didn't. But Savage has always been a really kind of unusual, weird guy. His radio show isn't like anyone else's radio show.
Right. So he talks a lot less about politics than a lot of other talk show hosts do.
Well, he's a lot less single-minded. He has this weird cluster of interests. He's interested in herbal medicine. He's interested in animals. He loves food. He loves to tell stories about, New York in the 50s and 60s. And he loves to talk about his life in a really unusual way. He has this kind of melancholy, depressive streak. And so the takeaway isn't necessarily, we're going to rally the troops and we're going to get this done politically. The takeaway is often, I'm probably going to go home and drink tonight. And that makes him a really interesting, really compelling character on the radio.
When the New Yorker comes up on a show like Savage's or Rush's, it's generally not in glowing terms. Michael Savage is, my guess, not a long-time subscriber to the magazine.
Well, he is a long-time reader.
He is?
Yeah,
okay.
He grew up in New York, and he has said he did grow up reading.
How hard was it to get him to talk to you, and how did you go about that?
Well, basically, I sent a bunch of emails to his people and finally got an email back from him. He writes, all the emails I've ever gotten from him, I think, have been in all caps. And he was kind of like, what do you want? And so I kind of explained to him that I wanted to write a story about him, that I listened to his show, that I enjoyed his show. I think every email I wrote him, he read on the air.
Wow.
And so it was this weird kind of three-way conversation where I'd write him again in response to the discussion that I'd heard on the air. It was pretty strange. I think we have a clip of him describing one of the emails he sent back to me after I had written him, asking him to please talk to me.
So I sent him this note, and I said, the cartoon that goes with the story, will it show me in the Gestapo or an SA uniform? Surely you don't believe I don't know what you want to try to make of me. Why must everyone in journalism be so obvious? Why must all of you in the extreme media paint everyone who you disagree with as demonic?
No, in fact, when I read your piece, I didn't think he came off as demonic at all.
When I actually finally kind of convinced him that, we should sit down and talk and it wasn't going to destroy his career, it was this kind of surreal thing because we had a great time and we had some beers and we sat on his porch and he's a great host and he was fun to talk to. I'd like to think he enjoyed the conversation, and I think there's something about him some part of him that thought it was really funny. On the radio the next day after the interview, one of the callers asked how it went, and he described me as looking a little bit like Obama, which coming from him I think was a deeply twisted kind of compliment.
He doesn't like Obama. He didn't like McCain. He doesn't like Rush Limbaugh. What would you describe his politics as? How would you boil it down? Hates everything, or?
Well, no. He's he calls himself a genuine independent conservative, and borders, language, and culture is one of his rallying cries, and so he believes strongly that illegal immigration is hurting America in all sorts of ways.
Right.
He worked in a clinic that served gay men in San Francisco in the early mid 1980s, just as the AIDS epidemic was hitting, and as he tells it, he called for closing down the bathhouses, which got him sort of exiled from this community that he had sort of been part of.
Well, liberals who called for that, too, were also really attacked. And,
And so he kind of traces his disillusionment with the gay rights movement to that moment. So he's a very vociferous critic of the gay rights movement. He's said a lot of things about terrorism, about Muslim terrorism, and about Islam itself that have caused a lot of offense to Muslim groups. So those are issues that he takes, a position that could be described as kind of an amped up version of the conservative gospel.
So I can't imagine Glenn Beck 20 years ago volunteering in a AIDS hospice or something like that.
Well,
how do you get from working with people with AIDS to being a conservative talk show host? What is his sort of career path?
Well, that's so interesting. There's been, a lot of articles that have run about him do almost like an expose, as if he had this past that he was hiding. Actually, in a lot of ways, he's really proud of his past. He, went to Queens College, then he moved out west. He befriended Ginsberg and Ferlinghetti and a bunch of beatniks. He lived in Hawaii. He did botanical research in Fiji and eventually got a PhD from UC Berkeley, which is funny enough.
Wow.
And he was an herbalist, and he wrote a whole string of books about natural healing, but he got disillusioned by a couple of things. One of them was AIDS and his disillusionment with the gay rights world. Another was that he says that affirmative action stymied his academic career, and he couldn't get a tenure-track job because he was a white male.
The conservatives of today, like me, those who believe in individual liberty, are actually a continuum of the liberal movement of the 1960s. Only we didn't go off the rail and become Marxists.
So, and there is this, it's partly social, I get the feeling, too. I get the feeling that it's partially living in the Bay Area, living among the beats, living in North Beach. He kind of came to feel that he wasn't part of this world, or that he didn't want to be part of this world, and that it was partly a personal reaction to what he saw around him.
It's funny because when you talk about his life, I think of someone like Norman Podhoretz or Irving Kristol, and who had this sort of...
Or David Horowitz.
Right. And so he seems to follow the path of quite a few neoconservatives.
Right. In the crudest possible term, I think one of the big differences with Michael Savage is that he stayed weird. and there's a countercultural feeling to his radio show, even now.
He was raised Jewish in New York. How important is his Jewish upbringing in his current... I mean, you hear it in his voice.
You hear it in his voice. He's kept the cultural Jewish identity he's kept very strongly. But spiritually, he talks about himself in a complicated way, kind of as a strong believer in the Bible and in Judeo-Christian values and sort of in God, but not necessarily in a straightforward way.
Let's say there's reincarnation. I'm trying to use logic here. I know it doesn't work, though. I've tried it 1,000 times. So there's nothing left but alcohol at that point. Let's say there's reincarnation. What's the good of it if you don't know it?
Part of his kind of countercultural identity, and an interesting hangover from his days as a beat and his time on North Beach, that he's still, a lot of the, these ideas of reincarnation and these Buddhist ideas are still something that he's fascinated by, and often kind of teases them out and kind of wrestles with them on the air, which is, yet another thing that makes him different from your average political pundit.
He also, you write in your piece, he also is sort of obsessed with his own health. And why is he so worried about that?
I mean, he talks about death, I would say, a few times an hour, for 2 or 3 hours a day, every day. He has an incredibly morbid sensibility, and in a way there's an interesting tension between that and his political beliefs, because part of him wants to say, America's going down the tubes because of Obama, because of, Sotomayor and whoever else, and we've got to put a stop to this and save our country. And there's part of him that says, I'm going to die, we're all going to die, it doesn't matter, we're all doomed. and part of the fun of listening to his show is hearing those two impulses fight it out.
That's why we're focused on politics, to make believe that we don't care about the eternal questions. This way we can get mad at the Republicans or Nixon. You can say Nixon did it. Or you can hate the Democrats that they did it. You don't have to face your own problem. You understand this or what? How you want to talk about everything? I'm going to talk about the economy again. Who do you think I am, Sean Hannity?
So when this piece comes out, who do you think you're going to get a harder time from? The Savage fans or the people who assume you're going to do a hit job on him and are like, wait, you're actually kind of a fan also. Your liberal friends.
I wouldn't want to presuppose anyone's reaction to this, but I'll certainly be listening to Michael Savage this week to see what he has to say.
All right. Well, Kay, thank you so much.
Thank you.